Hello, everyone. We're going to give people a few minutes to join. Welcome, welcome. As you join in, let us know where you are calling in from, which city, which country. Is it nice? Also, if you have any questions throughout the Zoom webinar, you can add them directly to the chat. Just make sure that you're sending the question to everyone and not just the host and panelists so we can all engage. Dallas, Minneapolis, awesome. Alrighty. London too, amazing. Alrighty, so without further ado, I'm gonna get started. So welcome to today's Tigerhall webinar. Our session features Cristina Herrera, who is Senior Director, Head of Transformation and Change Americas at JLL. Today's topic is prioritizing transformation initiatives without the politics. Cristina, take it away.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see you. And I recognize some of the faces who are joining us today and some of the names. Hi, Lisa. I know I've been meaning to catch up with you actually from St. Louis. Hi, Olivia, Sarah. It's so good to see your beautiful faces again. Welcome to this webinar. So I'm really excited about today's session for a couple of reasons. The first reason is this is something that has taken me quite a long time to get into a bit of a rhythm because projects and initiatives can be so deeply personal to our leadership teams and to our business unit leaders. So I'm hoping that today we can crack the door open and I can share a bit of a model that I've been working with and that I've worked with in the past, just uh, amending and pivoting a little bit as I go. And you're going to see what it looks like today. And who knows, maybe in a month's time or a year's time, it's going to evolve again. But I'm really keen to share this with you and also to learn how you leverage some of the content from here today and leverage it for yourself. So let's get stuck in to really why we're having this conversation. Let's be honest. Saying no to a project can feel like a political landmine. We've all been in a meeting where the person with the loudest voice wins, or the person who has a new hot priority, um, you know, lands the most attention, and all of a sudden that project becomes the highest of priorities and the only thing that actually matters, right? So today I want to give you an opportunity to share, what has helped me to stop with the guesswork, what's helped me to stop with the politics or politicking, and how do we move from who wants it more to what helps us win and what helps us win together. So, a little bit about me. I'm Cristina Herrera. I go by Chris. I've spent over a decade in the trenches of transformation and change, whether it's tech, finance, life sciences, or other verticals. Um, what I've seen time and time again is that $1 million projects fail. And it's not because the tech was bad or, you know, the nuances of the actual solution. It was because our organization or our departments couldn't decide on what to stop doing. And so that is really what we're excited to talk about today. Now, many of you don't know who JLL is. We are a corporate real estate management and project management firm, but we have an in-house consulting team that really has some really deep industry experience and domain experience across a couple of different core capabilities. Now, I won't get into the weeds of who we are, but I do want to kind of explain that we do sit at the intersection of strategy and the physical world, right? We're not just talking about workplace experience or workplace strategy. It's the built environments that people actually go to, they show up, they deliver. And so they provide a beautiful foundation for really driving transformative projects across tech verticals, across HR, across procurement, for example. And there's so much opportunity within the built environment. So today we're going to go through 4 key areas. Why prioritizing transformation initiatives is important, the problem, so the actual political traps that get in the way, a transformation initiative prioritization framework. Now that's a mouthful. And then your superpower as a transformation leader and what it means to help the organization to deprioritize in that process of prioritization. Let's get stuck in. Now, I do think it's important because we have a really great, diverse group on the call to hear from you to understand if this is something you've been experiencing. And I came up with a question that I thought would resonate the most. So grab your phones. And my question really is, how many of you have experienced this? You woke up today to a new priority that bumped the top priority that you just happened to be working on the night before. Let me know if you've experienced this. Does this happen to you? Is it a daily thing? Does it happen once a week? Is it rare? Oh my goodness. Okay. So I can see this evolving in real time. And a lot of you have been experiencing this once a week, every day. But what's interesting is that no one has actually jumped in to say, hey, you know what? We've got super clear priorities. This never happens, right? I've never told, hey, stop all that effort and work you've put on this project. This is the new priority. And that I think is very, very telling. So, what this is really telling us is we are all collectively experiencing priority whiplash. It's exhausting, it kills productivity, but most importantly, it's usually driven by the politics behind the scenes, the excitement, rather than the strategy, the alignment to the strategy itself. And please be aware that this behavior, this experience, it happens in startups, it happens in mature organizations, it happens at a team level as well at the enterprise initiative level. So all of us are subject to this experience. I don't think anyone is immune to this priority whiplash. What I want to do with the framework is, in our short time together, give you an opportunity to learn from mine, but then give you the, the, the understanding enough to leverage it for yourself. Because the reality is, when everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. And transformation really is the engine of organizational future growth. It's with transformation and it's with capacity building that our organizations can continue to transform and keep up with the market. But without the filter, there's a lot of noise in the system. And you've all just explained that as well. Now, there's a lot of research out there by McKinsey, Gartner, and a lot of others that talk about how transformations fail. 70%. I think the recent study said up to 80%. And it's not because of the lack of ideas, it's the lack of focus. So, prioritization has in the past been perceived as an admin task, but I'd love to challenge everyone to change that understanding in their organizations. It's about protecting your return on investment. It's about ensuring that your teams are not burning out on the wrong things. Now, we don't want them to burn out at all, but we don't want them to burn out on the wrong things because that takes a bigger dip into that morale. So that's what we want to make sure that we avoid. We want to make sure that not everything is at the equal level of critical urgency, because that just creates paralysis, as you can see with this gridlock, with this traffic. But this conversation, it happens all the time, but it matters more than ever. So what we can see here, and I know you've seen things like this before, and I think it's really important to focus on it. I just was listening to a webinar that Nelly gave last year, actually. She was highlighting the velocity of change. And so what we're looking at here is a recognition of the gap between the speed of technological change and then the capacity of organizations to keep up. This is the reality. Tech is moving like a rocket, and our organizations, they're moving like well, like organizations, right? There is that gap in the middle. Now, that gap in the middle has been called a lot of things in the past. From an organizational perspective, I'm seeing it as the politics pit or the stress zone, right? When we try to do too much with too little, then we start to accumulate strategic debt. The strategic debt is things that we have to spend extra time and extra money redoing in 6 months' time because actually we shouldn't have been focusing on this in the first place. So, this is what we need to be really ruthless about as we continue to move and try to bridge that gap in between change and how organizations are able to keep up with that, because otherwise the market will outrun us. Now, I have worked with many firms and many clients who believe that they can outrun this stress zone, this politics pit. And they always say to me, Chris, we have a bias for action. It runs in our culture. We hear something and we take action. We don't need everyone to be aligned. And while that might sound good, in the back of my head, I imagine a picture where everyone has a bias for action and they're running in 50 different directions. So this politics pit and this stress zone just becomes wider. Execution is not the problem. Sharpness is. So regardless of your hustle, regardless if everything is a priority, regardless how much you pay your top talent, this is the zone where we will pay the price. And so will the employees at the organization. Without direction, it's going to be incredibly difficult to stay aligned. So as we continue down this journey, it really is, again, a key message around alignment as well. But if we were to try and quantify this, what we're seeing in the research is that there is a $3.4 trillion transformation surge. Now we know the investment that is being made into transformation today in 2026. Now, if we have a 70 to 80% failure rate currently on large scale transformations, I mean, this means that we're only realizing $1.2 trillion and we're leaving the rest on the table, or we're leaving the rest in the swell, in that pit. And that's what we want to stop. Why is this important? We often talk about capacity as if it was a computer server. Let's just add more RAM. It'll run. It'll be fine. But in a transformation, capacity is human. Every time we launch a new initiative, we are asking our teams to spend mental currency, and that is a big ask. If the flow of change is too fast, your best people just get busy and they just get burnt out. It just leads to fatigue. And with all this change happening in the world and in our organizations, we really have to focus on the tools and the skill sets that we need that can help to build our capacity, not narrow it. Give me a thumbs up if you're following along so far. Some context setting here. Love it, love it, love it. Perfect. Okay. Let's talk about the problem. Now, what do politics look like in organizations, right? They look like a bunch of different things. Now, before we solve the problem, we have to name the problem. And this is hard. It's hard because we've all met the hippo. We've all met the highest paid person who has an opinion, who rules by their gut. We've always met the people who are in their silos, who want to protect their own backyard. I only care about my department. I don't care about anyone else. We need this feature. These are not just habitual, annoying habits. They're not just annoying habits. They lead to strategic debt at the end of the day. They eat your time and they deliver zero value. So what we want to do is start to cut those anchor chains. Let's talk through each one of these politics, because I'm going to ask you next, which are some of the political traps that you're struggling with the most? So the hippo, right? Usually well-meaning. So we do want to emphasize they mean well. However, their gut feeling can cost the company millions in strategic debt. Now, we're not here to kill the hippo's dreams. We do not want to do that. We're here to give them the data so that they can dream smarter. And so the framework that I want to give you helps to change the conversation with them because instead of challenging that person's authority, we invite them to challenge the criteria and it turns a power play into a strategic session because it can be incredibly uncomfortable having to say, hold on a minute, this project, this initiative just doesn't make sense. Why are we doing this? And it's not a conversation you want to take personally into the room. You want to come in with the criteria, with the data. Now, I've mentioned the silo trap. This is when a leader prioritizes what's best for their specific department rather than the entire enterprise. And this one is super common, no matter what type of initiative is being rolled out, whether it's at the team level or the enterprise level. The favoritism trap, right? This is when it's about who you know rather than what you can deliver. And so, what the framework is going to do is help you to stop this habit by requiring the same data from everyone, regardless of their title. Okay, let's think about the historical trap here. We've always done this, right? Or we've taken this project too far. We can't stop now. I'm sure you've all heard this before, right? Yes. Because of the velocity of change that we saw in the previous slide, we need to be able to kill our legacy projects that are no longer serving high on our strategic framework. Yeah, I love it. Thank you for the clap because I feel passionate about this one as well. What served us in 2024 may not serve us going forward, right? And business strategies and goals and those strategic conversations that drive how an organization is going to grow, it's no longer a 10-year plan set and forget, right? It's rapid, it's very quick now. So the historical trap is a good one to look out for. Now the next one is the loudest voice, or what I call volume politics. The person who creates the most noise gets the most resources. This is how maybe one team gets all of the priority one projects, and then no one has other initiatives to help them grow and support them in the organization. So again, with our framework, we want to shift the power from the person with the loudest voice to the person with the strongest data. All following? Lovely. Now, the common thread across all of this is that these are subjective at the end of the day. We want to shift that. So my next question to you, please pop your phones up. Which political traps are you struggling with right now? And if there are ones that I haven't put on here, I haven't put in the presentation today, please feel free to jump in the chat and share what other traps and landmines you're trying to dodge right now. It's not easy, but we're all experiencing it. Okay, let's see how this evolves. Territory trap. Yeah. Only caring about my department, my backyard. I've got Christina in the chat here. Lack of structure or expectations. Yep, we've always done it this way. Absolutely. Yep. And it can be daunting coming into the room to have a conversation around what projects make sense that are aligned and which projects just don't make sense. An urgency trap, Stacy. Yes. Absolutely. Everything's urgent all the time. It can be really exhausting. Really, really exhausting. And Jonathan, that's a really great one as well. A parent company's daily priority shifts change business priorities. So in that relationship, when there's a parent company, I can see how this dynamic is just exponential. Yeah. Oh, rumored success. Kim, that's a great one. That is a great one. Feeds into that favoritism trap. Yeah. Doug, I agree. So the territory, the silo traps are really the most common traps. Let's jump into a little bit of what this prioritization framework um, looks like. But before we do that, I want to show you what it doesn't look like because there is a tool that all of us are likely using, even now, even if it's just a mental way that we're using it, that is helpful at a task level or at a team level, but may not be helpful for transformation initiatives because I have not been able to use this for transformation initiatives. And this is Eisenhower's matrix, right? This is where we start. This is the low hanging fruit model. It's great for quick wins. It's great for to-do lists. I use it in my personal life. We all know this model, right? This matrix, the 2 by 2, the famous 2 by 2. It's also used in a lot of change management, implementation, execution, conversations with the client. I love it, but it's not working for me at the transformational level. And I believe the reason it's not working is because it is blind to strategy, right? It doesn't have the right weighting and it's very subjective. So, this is where my framework came to life. And before I show you, I have to admit the version of the framework that I sent out, I think it was maybe in October of last year after one of the ECLC's monthly chats, had seven different pillars. And since then, I've revised to reduce it and simplify it to 4 pillars. Now, each pillar is weighted to reflect its importance, right? I provided a scorecard of 1 to 5. The first one is strategic alignment. How well the project supports core business strategy and long term objectives. That has the highest weighting. The financial impact. So, this is about cost savings, about ROI, about revenue generation, 25%. We also provide 25% to resource requirements. It's the people that bring the transformations to life, right? We need the resources. And then 20% to the complexity. How difficult is this really? Now, this framework becomes our GPS, right? I was going to say a compass, but I think a GPS makes a little bit more sense. Instead of guessing, right, we want to focus on these specific lenses. The strategic fit really at the end of the day is asking, are we doing the right thing? Financial impact. What's the payoff? Is it worth the money? Then we talk about the load. Will it break our teams? Do we have the people to roll this out? And then, I mean, I love this term rather than complexity, the mess. How hard is it to build? How messy is this going to really get? So, what I love about this framework is it helps us to get on the same page, hopefully before the first dollar is spent. Now, that's not always the case. This is not a perfect framework, but it is a reliable framework to have a consistent conversation for all your projects. Now, yes, some of you might say, well, hold on a minute. If we don't have the resource requirements, it doesn't matter how strategically aligned it is. We're not going to have the people to roll it out. That's fair. That's fair. But if it is strategically aligned, it is more likely you will get the funding to make sure you've got the right resource requirements, whether you insource or outsource some of that to help to bring this to life. Now, oh, Tara, you are my best friend. Thank you. Now, one of the the original 7 pillars that I simplified down into 4 was compliance and regulatory risk. Now, I'm glad you mentioned this because I took it out of here because I guess I assumed, you know what, it's more of a strategic alignment question. It's a necessity. But you're right. Maybe it needs to have a footnote here And that's an opportunity to enhance this framework to say, hold on a minute, if this is a regulatory requirement, it goes straight into the green zone. We've got to kickstart this project. There is no buts about it. But this framework is built to help us give us a starting point when it comes to the data. So what we do is we have a look at the project. Ideally, your leadership team has come together and put together a bit of a business case for where they think this project, this initiative is going to bring this company, this organization value. And then we can go through and complete this scoring. Now, I've done this in multiple ways. I've done this with CFO only. I've done this in a room where everyone completes their own and then we consolidate all the scores and do a big reveal. And then I've done this in a much more manual and laborious way, which hopefully you don't have to do, but it's sitting with each of them. And now sitting with each of them is good to help them gain an understanding of why the framework is trustworthy and consistent. But once you start getting into the flow of things, being able to do it together is the ideal way. And it's important to be transparent about the scores, right? So let's think about calculating those scores. Each score is weighted against the agreed weighting formula that we already agreed on with the team beforehand. Depending on where it sits, the final score helps us to understand whether we should accelerate this project, whether we should maybe hold, discuss the friction points, whether we should delay, or whether we should cancel. Because canceling in this case, the red that brings fear to people's hearts and minds, the red shouldn't feel like a failure. The red in this case should feel like a win. Because every project we move to red is a resource we've just recaptured to make a green project successful. It's about focus, not about failure. Now, watch out for the yellow trap, right? This yellow zone, this is typically where we have a huge danger of scope creep. Because if a project is at 3.5, but then over time starts to get more and more complex, it might slip down into the orange zone. And so this framework is something that I have been bringing back to the table every quarter. And it depends on your organization. If you are moving fast and furious, the quarter might be too far apart, right? But this again, it's a data point to help you then overlay your business judgment, such as that regulatory requirement, right? We've got a data point, but now we've got the regulatory requirement. Yes, it's going to move straight into the accelerate. It has to happen. But now we have a bit of an understanding of the resources we have to actually bring this to life. What I love about doing it this way is that the data that comes out of the framework gives you permission to have a trade-off conversation with your leaders without it feeling like a political attack. The data has already depersonalized the decision. You are no longer the bad guy or the bad woman saying no to their favorite project or the project they've got the most excitement and energy around. It's really about, okay, this is the score. Let's have a conversation about trade-offs. Now I'm looking at the time, and I did build out an example for you that you will get in your slides. I'm going to flash it on the screen, but I don't know if we're going to have time to cover it. So let me just talk super high level through the practical example. And of course, I work within the corporate real estate sector. So the example is around a real estate relocation. The two scenarios that I've provided is a scenario where 2024 planning, right? We've got this legacy plan to move through this massive trophy, Class A building and enforcing a 5-day a week in-person mandate. Scenario 2 is scrapping the big headquarter It's opting for hub and spoke model. It's opting for focusing on talent anywhere. How do we hire the best talent no matter where they are, whether they're near a headquarter or not? And as you can see, with both of these, regardless of the scoring, they both landed within the yellow zone. A 305 and a 360. Now, from a strategic alignment perspective, you can see they are completely polar in strategic fit. What I challenge you to do when you get into a situation like this is have the conversation about trade offs. It is very likely that an executive will say, you know what? I see it. I understand that scenario two is closer to the green zone. However, I love scenario one. I want this to be my legacy as a CEO, CFO, whoever it is. And so sometimes you might feel, hold on a minute, we've gone through this exercise, but now you've got my hands handcuffed. There's nothing I can do, right? We're going to go down this route that is not actually a strategic fit. The conversation, it doesn't end there. The benefit of showing a scenario side by side is to be able to show the political desire, so that you can really have an honest conversation about what the facts are, right? You don't have to say this is stupid. You don't have to say, um, goodness, this is a resource hog. It doesn't fit with our new agile strategy. You don't have to say, um, this, I mean, you should say this project doesn't serve the strategy, right? But I do think it's important to talk through the gaps with your clients, with your leaders, and and really lean in to the conversation. Because once you have a data point, the hard discussions just got easier. It's no longer about you saying, no, your project is not getting prioritized. It's now about the next conversation. So I need to really emphasize something I said earlier. The data and the framework is what gives you permission to have a trade off conversation with leaders without it feeling like a political attack. It's harsh words, but it projects can be incredibly personal. And so it's no longer your opinion, it's a business reality. Now we know from the example that scenario one, the math only gave us a 3.05. That's just the start of the conversation. Now we can have a grown up conversation about the trade offs. We can't have it all. If we choose a 3.05 headquarter project, we are consciously choosing to move slower on all of our other initiatives. Can you hear the trade off conversation, the language starting to come through? Because we're trading innovation for stability. So we can do this, but this is exactly what we have to give up. Are we ready to pay that price? And then we start to enter the discussion of what it would take organizationally to take on a project that does not align well or score well. Let's skim through some of the trade-offs. Trade-off number one, speed versus scope. So we can do more things slowly or fewer things quickly. If we think about our scenario one, which was a headquarter, investing in a headquarter with a score of 3.05, our biggest constraint is likely going to be speed, right? To hit our transformation targets by the end of the quarter, we have to decide, do we want the full scope of a 500 person or 1,000 person headquarter move, which would be a massive resource drain, because that scored incredibly high in the matrix, is around resources. Or do we want speed? Can't have it all. If we choose this relocation, are we intentionally choosing to move slower in every other initiative? because we're pulling our resources onto this project. Are we comfortable with that delay? These are the types of conversations that you now have permission to talk about. And I'm not saying it's easy, but it is necessary. Let's have a look at trade-off number 2. Innovation versus stability. There is a benefit to both. But we know that teams stop adopting when they're overwhelmed. Whether it's a lack of vision, focus, or understanding, overwhelm happens. So there is benefit in stability. And that's something that has to be recognized. The scenario 1, the score of 3.05 score, right? It was a low strategic fit for our goals. We're looking to hire talent all over the world. We want the best talent. We don't care where they are. It doesn't make sense. So we're facing an innovation versus stability trade-off. The headquarter plan provides a stability of a centralized office, but it trades away the innovation of flexible global talent model. The data suggests that by clinging to the physical asset, we're potentially suffocating the very agility that we are trying to build, that we want, we desire to build. Again, are we comfortable to pay this price? Who knows? Your executive might say yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We're comfortable. Let's do it. But you've had the conversation. Trade-off number 3, alignment versus opportunistic value. Now, I don't know about you, but I love a shiny object, right? It's a lot of fun. It's very exciting, but it can detract from long-term goals. So let's think about this relocation opportunity again. Now, this relocation opportunity, scenario 1, was identified in 2024, but our 2026 strategy is more aligned with agility, right? This project really only scores 1 in the strategic fit category because of that. So we have to be honest. Are we staying aligned to the current North Star, or are we chasing an outdated opportunity just because it's already started? The model suggests we're out of alignment. And I think that short sentence is something you could write down and start to practice. The model suggests we are out of alignment. The model suggests XYZ. Allow the model to be your shield, right? Allow the trade-off to be your sword. That's what you come to spar with. That's what you come to have that conversation with. Trade-off number 4, and I promise this is the last one, and we could go for days on trade-offs, but I promise this is the last one for today. Not every department needs an initiative. Now, this one can be a little bit tricky for some departments. Everyone wants to do something fun and innovative, but that does not always make sense. So we have to talk about focus. We have to talk about making sure that everyone gets an opportunity for a premium seat in a building, for example. Do we want everyone to have that premium seat in the building by being able to come into a hub and spoke model, a great space where they can choose where they want to come and work, close to where they currently live, good work-life balance? Or do we want to make this a little bit tricky and focus our capital on a space that might not be able to provide that? And you're also not hiring the best talent. It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. Now, I think the hardest part for me in my learning was not learning about the benefit of a score and a weighted framework. It wasn't learning about trade-offs per se. It was learning how to have the conversation, because that is daunting. It is. So let's have a talk through what might work for you. And again, it might not, and that's okay. But sharing the data is phase one. I want to walk you through the latest portfolio scoring. We ran the project through our framework and it returned a score of X. In our system, it sits within the yellow category, which means it has significant friction compared to our green initiatives. So all you're doing here is stating the facts. No opinions tied to this. At this stage, your leadership team already knows what the framework is, how the weighting works, right? We've got agreement of that. All you're doing is say, hey, I ran the project through this. Or we were in a room together, remember? We ran the project through this. These are the results. Phase two, introduce the trade-offs. So you got your shield, bring your sword. Because it's not in the green zone, we have a hard decision to make around trade-offs. So call it out in the beginning. Specifically, we're facing tension between stakeholder equity and enterprise focus. If we force this project into the green zone, and that's important language, if we force it into the green zone, we're choosing to spread our best resources thin across everything rather than focusing them on the projects and the data that the data shows will move the needle the fastest this year to meet our strategic objectives. Phase three, give them context. Now, it's not about creating urgency for urgency's sake. It's about providing a bit of a stake in the ground about the velocity of change, why they developed their strategic goals in the first place. Bring that back to them. Help them understand the risk as well of the other strategic initiatives that you've got going on that are going to be starved for attention if we force this one to the green zone. And finally, close collaboratively. It shouldn't be your decision to make the determination that this project is not going to go through. It's your responsibility to make a recommendation, but you need them, whether it's an executive in the C-suite, whether it's a business unit leader, whether it's an executive administration group, they need to agree with you. They need to be there at the table with you. So the question isn't, is this a good project? It's, are we willing to trade speed on our top strategic goals to keep this project in the timeline? My recommendation is this was the hardest part. And I'll be honest with you, again, it was terrifying to have this conversation. But the reason why this script works is because it removes the leader's ability to say no. You are sharing data, you are introducing a discussion, you are helping to contextualize, and you are asking an open question. It's not a no or a yes. You put the responsibility of the trade-off back on that leader. And that's what makes this really special. And then you can remind them that deprioritization, it's not a failure. Deprioritization is a strategic focus. So never make this personal. Remember and remind them that it is an opportunity to give oxygen to their top priority projects. You provide an opportunity to be a reality checker. This is the state that we're in right now. How can we give oxygen to these other great projects that we've already agreed on? Okay, your superpower as a transformation leader, and I will say, give me a quick thumbs up if you're still following, because that was a lot of information. Okay, see some thumbs up. Perfect, perfect. Love it. Cool. All right, so let's have a look at the moment of truth. And I know you likely knew we were coming to this anyway. But the moment of truth is the secret to a successful transformation isn't what you start, it's what you have the data and the courage to stop. It's not a failure, it's a strategic focus to deprioritize. And more than ever, that's going to be incredibly important because of the velocity of change, because of that gap that we were talking about, and because of the capacity. Now, when we talked about capacity before, there was an image of someone holding these elastic bands in their hands. Something's got to give, right? Your arms get tired, you let go of that slack, or the elastic gets slack. Something has to give. So deprioritization can become a competitive advantage in creating capacity for the right change, for the right focus. This is going to really help to position your credibility within the organization. You're no longer the bad guy. You're just a facilitator of reality. You're helping to make trade offs visible. You're helping leaders to make informed decisions. Now, again, this used to happen every 10 years, every 5 years, every 3 years, every year, now every quarter. I don't know what this is going to look like at your organization. But I also want to say it's okay if you're not ready to use a tool like this. If you do anything, you should focus on building trust with your leaders. As you continue to build trust, you slowly gain permission to be able to have some of these hard conversations. You test the waters there a little bit more. And I'm not gonna give you too much more other than this, but I do want to ask you a question based on what we've shared so far, because I know it was dense. I know it was a lot. What is your favorite takeaway? What is something that maybe you think you could start to apply in your thinking? Maybe not even with the client. What are some things that you can start to ask yourself based on our conversation today? And feel free to answer this, yep, whether it's in the Slido or in the chat. So I am a facilitator of reality. Deprioritization is not a failure. The scoring framework itself, perfect. Love the framework. Lovely. Now remember, the framework is not fixed. We might find an error in the framework, and that's okay. But it still provides us with a stake in the ground to speak with data. Love it. I love what Kim put in the chat. What are you unintentionally saying yes to? That's a great question. And strategic debt accumulates in the politics pit. Yes. Strategic debt, that is the rework, that is the things we have to wrangle and wonder, hold on, why did we just spend 6 months doing this? How much more money do we have to spend to just at least put this project on pause now? Because it also takes money to put projects on pause contractually. Empowerment, yes. The employee lag, trade offs, love that. Mindful use of scripting. Honestly, I as a facilitator of transformation, we don't need to have all the answers. We need to remain curious. And I think that's one of our biggest powers is having a network such as the ECLC, where we can come together and stay curious and share information like this. Perfect. Now, I know we had a couple of questions specifically around the slides. Yes, I will absolutely share these with you. 100%. Now, that is the end of the information that I have prepared for today. And I will invite Julianne to come back and let me know if there's anything that I have missed from a question standpoint, any feedback.
Amazing. Thank you, Christina. So yeah, I'll start off with one of our first questions, and if you guys have extra questions, please add them into the chat directly. So from Lysol, how do you appropriately gauge change management resources requirements without knowing necessarily the level of change management complexity at the beginning?
That's a good question. I've done this in multiple different ways. The first way is um, starting with a baseline, like a minimal viable product. At a minimum, this is what we're going to need for successful change. Now, for me, for the type of projects that I work on currently, that is someone dedicated to communications, that is someone that is dedicated to the employee experience, that is the change strategists themselves. And so that's three resources. For me, a minimal viable product is typically two full-time or one half-time resource. Depending on the type of project you're working on, you might be able to kind of ramp that up and ramp that down. But I wouldn't say that there is a rule around this. I think this is one of the things that we need to pool within our network. What's been working for you? What does this typically look like for you? Does that answer the question?
Thanks. I don't know if Lysol's going to respond, but here, let's see if as they are responding, maybe we can go with Heather's question. What was the impetus for shifting to four pillars? Did you find a way to fold the others into these four? Sometimes it feels like we're oversimplifying for the sake of it because that's what people are used to.
Oh, that's a great question. um, it was a couple of things. Honestly, I don't know if it was the right decision. It might not have been because to the point of the category that's currently the missing, right? The regulatory and compliance that makes an initiative obviously needing to jump straight into the green zone, right? So maybe it is too simplified, but my intention to simplify it was really um, to make the onboarding process smoother. So to onboard leaders onto what a scoring framework would look like, seven felt like too much. When I thought about the cognitive load, I was thinking if I could simplify that, I could have them walking away with the top three things or the top four things rather than the top seven things. Now, let's see if we're successful with this simplification. It's already been simplified in the last 6 months. But I'm also keen to hear your feedback. If you can try it, give it a go. I mean, let's discover this together.
Molly asks, where does the you've committed to this timeline for one team, and then you end up with another team that comes in and says, no, our thing is absolutely urgent. How do you deal with that?
Oh, that's great. I mean, that speaks to the silo and the territory politics. So in that situation, I go back to running them through the agreed criteria. It's less about helping them understand and justifying and convincing, and it's more speaking with conviction because the data shares it, right? The proof is in the scoring. So it is important that you don't just jump into scoring right away without an opportunity to educate leaders about the importance of scoring. Because from the flip side, they need to understand that if they are in alignment with you about a timeline, there's not going to be any other department that's going to come in and just railroad them and like squash them down. So when you frame it in the inverse, I say, "Oh, I see the need for it. Yep, I get it." But that I think that piece is initially a bit of an education process.
And so far we only have one last question. If you guys have more questions, do add them in the chat. But I guess you're too clear, Chris. So we have one more question from Heather. For your last criteria, the one about complexity, can you give a bit more of a voiceover as to how you guys define complexity?
Yeah, honestly, this one's a tricky one as well. Complexity, it depends what type of initiative it is. If it is an initiative that is going to be impacting day-to-day behavior, complexity there is how much effort or how many habits need to change because of the implementation of this initiative. Typically, for the real estate sector, this might be an adoption of new ways of working. So, something that would impact someone in their day to day from day one. How you move in the space, how you reserve a space, the expectations about clean desk policies and packing up and or wiping down your desk. They seem so simple, but from a behavioral habitual standpoint, it's quite complex and it's going to take time. So it depends on your project, really, it does, the types of initiatives you adopt.
Seems good. So that was our last question. Thank you, Chris, so much for doing this webinar. Really appreciate everybody coming out. And yeah, we'll send over that deck to everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate your time today.